There is no hood like parenthood. Hi, I'm Kanika Chadda Gupta. I'm a former CNN journalist, mom of 3, including twins, and host of That's Total Mom Sense, the podcast. Now, if I had $1 every time I heard, gee, you have your hands full. On my show, I interview change makers on their life lessons, legacy, and superpower of intuition, which I call our mom sense and dad sense. I've had the privilege of working with Mom 2.0, March of Dimes, and the White House, and have had some pretty amazing parents on my show.
Hey, what's up? I'm Kelly Rowland.
Hi, this is Chelsea Clinton.
It's me, Bobby Brown. Can't wait to share my story.
That's Total Mom Sense is a production of the Evergreen Podcast Network. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and on YouTube so you never miss an episode. To join my tribe, visit that'stotalmomsense.com and follow me on Instagram at Kanika Chadda Gupta. Now let's dive into today's episode. It's Diwali season, and we're honored to celebrate with Lexus, where light, luxury, and innovation shine as one. In the city that never sleeps, luminaries gather to connect as a community and embody the standard of amazing. Just like every detail of a Lexus, this celebration is crafted with precision, passion, and endless possibility. May your days be filled with brilliance, love, and light. Here's wishing you and yours a very happy Diwali. So when we think of the adage, never meet your heroes, that's because public figures oftentimes end up being less exceptional than we envision. Today, I'm meeting one of my heroes who actually walks the walk and talks the talk and has helped me feel so seen as a human being and mother in this world. Her name is Komisar. She is a clinical social worker, psychoanalyst, parent coach, and author with over 40 years of experience helping individuals overcome anxiety, depression, and compulsive disorders to lead more fulfilling lives. Her books, Being There, Why Prioritizing Motherhood in the First 3 Years Matters, and Chicken Little, The Sky Isn't Falling, Raising Resilient Adolescents in the New Age of Anxiety, show positivity as a way forward in a series of misery loves company, doom and gloom literature that there is in parenting. I am so honored to have you on the show, Erica. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I wanted to actually start with an anecdote that came up when my third cousin, I'm going to give him a shout out, Nikki, told me that he actually listens to this podcast and follows my work on social, and he's 27 years old. And he said he was curious about it because eventually he wants to marry and become a father. And he felt like me, he calls me Kanika Didi. It's like a respectful way of saying sister in Hindi. And Sunil Bhaiya, which is my husband, he just says, you know, I love how you're raising your kids and I want to do that when I'm ready. And it just got me thinking about how Gen Z and my generation of kids we're rearing, Gen Alpha, need to see how powerful family can be and how purposeful life can be when you're family first. And so I wanted to start there because, you know, we are on the verge of a population collapse. There is, you know, a statistician, Stephen Shaw, who explains this in The Birth Gap, and Pew Research shares how in 2100, you know, our population can flatline. And it's because the sentiments around having kids, there's a trepidation around it. And, you know, many Gen Zers are saying that it's too expensive. I'm not going to be able to travel or, you know, have this self-care, climate change, this, that, and the other. And I know you're on the same page with me about why sacrifice is actually the antidote to narcissism and how we can reshape in a positive way these individuals' thinking.
It's interesting because the word sacrifice, it's an interesting word. Giving is the antidote to narcissism.
Yes.
Meaning giving feels good. And if you ever doubt it, think about, look at your children, but you could think about when you were a child, how it was very exciting to run and open your presents on Diwali or Hanukkah or Christmas or your birthday.
Right.
But what was even more exciting was to watch your mommy open her Mother's Day present from you or open the card from you.
Yes.
And it was so exciting giving the present and watching the expression of the person who you give that present to. And so giving innately brings human beings joy. We're wired to give. Mm-hmm. It elevates our dopamine to give. You know, one of the ways, I guess I could be called a sort of a serial prescriber of dogs to people with mental health issues, depression or anxiety. Yes, it's the responsibility and the sacrifice, but it's more about giving, how good it feels to take care of something other than yourself, and also how much love you get in return. Mm-hmm. So it's really the giving. And I think that if you see your parents give more than they take, if you see that they experience joy in giving, that they love to give to you, they love to feed you, they love to provide for you, they love to spend time with you, they love to see the expression that you have when they give to you. That's what's modeled for you. And what it does is it turns on a predisposition in human beings to love that. Right. But if you see your parents self-centered, self-oriented, distracted, preoccupied with their own things, or worse for children, resentful of the giving, then what's modeled for those children, they go into a defensive mode, and what's modeled for them is what is carried on to the next generation. Yes. Yes, it's sacrifice and responsibility, but it's really at the root of sacrifice and responsibility is giving and loving. And I think that has not been modeled for young people as a powerful sort of charge of dopamine. And, they're looking for dopamine in all the wrong places, as they say.
Yes. We have the quick hits everywhere. Right. Well, speaking of giving, tell us about your mom, Edith, and, what you learned from her, the legacy she left.
Well, so I wrote a piece for the Wall Street Journal about my own mother. My mother died of a terrible disease called Lewy bodies disease.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, but she died at about 86, and just short of her 87th birthday. And she was sick for a long time. And so I had a very long goodbye to a very nurturing mother. She wasn't perfect. She was the daughter of my grandmother. My maternal grandmother was an orphan. She was orphaned we're Russian Jewish. She was orphaned in Russia when she was 3. Both of her parents died, one of typhus, one of, I think, liver disease or kidney disease. Oh, goodness. But they both died within 6 months of each other, leaving about 5 children on their own. Very young children, the youngest being 1. And so my grandmother was orphaned, and she was passed around from pillar to post, and finally came over to America at 13 by herself on one of those big boats that you hear about that immigrants would come over, scary boats. And so she had a wonderful, loving mother for the first 3 years. That's what she remembers, my grandmother. But she lacked all of the mothering after 3. And I think when my mother was born, my mother suffered a lot from generational trauma. And so my mother was sweet and loving and little girl-like, very affectionate, but would space out, would what we call dissociate today.
Yes.
And if you'd catch her and she wasn't quite there, you'd say, Mom, where are you? She's in Yiddish. She'd say, "Lass mich through. Leave me alone. I'm in La La Land.
Right.
Leave me alone." And so that was tough for me because she was very loving and very affectionate. She was there till I was 5, but she had a kind of a defensive mental illness, right? Sort of a defense that was tough for me. And so, what did it do? It created 2 psychoanalysts in one family, both my sister and myself, and then 2 other helping professionals. But that's also a testament to my mother's love. All 4 of us went into helping professions.
Yes.
One a nutritionist, one a teacher, 2 therapists. So, that says a lot. So she was a very loving woman. And until she got sick, was loving, and there when I was in distress, it would be my mother I would call because she was a wonderful listener when I was in distress. And then she got this terrible disease very early. But yeah, so my mother was a big influence in terms of how I love my children, how I cook for my children. She was big into feeding. My mother and father were big into food and cooking and feeding. And so, yeah, she was a very big part of, I think, why all my sisters and I are in helping professions.
That's incredible. This actually makes me think of a quote that you've shared in many of your talks. Every person is a bridge spanning 2 legacies, the one they inherit and the one they pass on. Family pathology rolls from generation to generation like a fire in the woods, taking down everything in its path until one person in one generation has the courage to turn and face the flames. That person brings peace to their ancestors and spares all the children that follow.
That's right.
And that's exactly what you and your siblings have done.
Yeah.
And then I guess let's dive into various topics, starting with coupling, because I feel like, in the trajectory that is life, there's so many different seasons, and you talk about this in your book, but it's also, I want to go back and again set up Gen Z for their best life. So coupling and finding a spouse, and I know your 3rd book is going to be about this. I personally believe it's the biggest make or break decision in your life. Because who you choose to spend your time and your life with and have children with really influences what a family dynamic could be. And, it could be amazing or it could go to shit. And yeah, so let's start there. How do we know, how to find that best person for us? So
the book that's coming out in a year, it's done. It's just being published, I think, next spring, is actually on divorce.
Yeah.
But one of the premises of the book is that, yes, the most important decision you'll ever make in your entire life is who you love. The second most important decision is what kind of meaningful and purposeful work you choose. Right?
Yes, agreed.
And so who you love isn't just romantically who you love, but it's who you surround yourself with, your friends, your extended family. Those are very important choices.
Yes, we are a sum of our 5.
Yeah, we are. That's exactly correct. So, you'd say that if you didn't make that choice well, all is not lost, because I hate for people to feel that if they made a poor choice, we call it repair. If you know that you made a poor choice, don't go back in the ring and make another choice till you examine the poor choice you made. So, there's a real necessity for what I do, because it helps people to examine choices they've made that aren't so healthy. But and we tend to do what Freud called neurotic repetition. If we don't examine what's happened to our own families, not just in one generation, but previous generations. For instance, someone who comes from a Holocaust surviving family, or someone in my case whose grandmother was orphaned and all of her siblings were scattered and some of them abused and were left abandoned, essentially. Trauma tends to repeat itself because our choices that we make are informed by are deeply unconscious losses. We
Yes.
don't think about it on a day-to-day basis, but our choices are repetitions, patterns of what's happened to us in the past. If we were abused by our parents, we're more likely to be abusive. If we had a narcissistic parent, we're more likely to be narcissistic with our children. If we had a borderline parent, we're more likely to have a borderline personality and pass it on to our children.
Right.
And that is the nature of generational trauma. So Terry Real's comment is, at any point, you can examine the choices you have. You can examine your past losses and traumas and make different choices and choose a different path. But you can't do that unless you look back. People are often scared to look back, which is why this whole field of CBT has taken off, because you're basically offering people chocolate cake and pizza for breakfast. Right. And if you offer people chocolate cake and pizza for breakfast, they'll probably eat it rather than, eggs and fruit and
reversing the
good stuff.
dependency. Yeah.
So because it's hard to look back, but
Right.
if you don't look back, you can't move forward in a healthy way. And people often get confused and think that the kind of therapy I do, I'm a psychoanalyst, so psychoanalytic psychotherapy is about looking back and getting stuck there. Why would we do that?
Yeah.
I mean, it just doesn't make any sense.
No.
It's looking back to help you to make better choices in the future.
Yes.
And understand the choices you've made. So, but yes, the decision of who you surround yourself with in terms of being loving and supportive, the litmus test to whether you've chosen the correct partner for yourself is, do they bring out the best in you? And do you bring out the best in them?
Yes.
Have they supported you to be your most confident, most loving, most generous, most secure self? And if the answer to that, any of those, is no, then you're probably with the wrong person.
Yes. And I do think, sometimes you have to go against the grain, because I feel my husband is the best person for me, but he's my biggest challenger and cheerleader. And I love that he makes me think outside of my, little realm often.
Yeah.
So
It's always good to have somebody who challenges you. You want to have somebody who challenges you intellectually,
Right.
who challenges you, who's your checks and balances for sure. But in the end, you want them to love and support you above all else. It's interesting because marriage is not unconditional.
Yes.
The only love that's unconditional is with your children.
Yeah,
right?
and pets.
And your pets. That's right. And your pets for you, right? That's why we love dogs.
Yes.
But it's any other relationship is not unconditional. But we go into marriage with the illusion that it's unconditional. To find the right partner, you have to truly be yourself. So if you're not truly yourself, if you're behaving in such a way that you are conducted by some internal expectations or external ones, then what happens is the person that you're with falls in love with someone you're not.
Right.
So for the person that you're with and for there to be reciprocal love, you have to be yourself.
Yeah.
Because you want them to fall in love with you as who you are. That is the closest thing you'll get to unconditional love, if they know you fully and they love you in spite of the things that are your weaknesses and in respect for the things that are your strengths, right? Yeah. So I think we have a lot of young people not even aware that they're responding to internal and external expectations of others. It's very important that you know who you are before you choose a partner, because if you don't know who you are, or you're still functioning on a level where you're responding to others' expectations or even your internal voice that is others' I always say, who's sitting in the front row when you're performing?
Ooh, yes.
And I don't mean in reality, but
it
could be in reality too. But who's sitting in the front row of your mind?
Yeah.
When you're doing something,
right?
Anything, performing in any way. Is it a loving mother and father and grandmother and sister or brother or best friend who's cheering you on and saying, you don't have to be perfect and we love you no matter what, and you're an amazing person and you're kind and you're loving and you're smart. What is that person? Who is in that audience?
Yes.
And so if you don't know yourself, you're probably not going to make a very good choice.
Right.
Yeah.
So true. Now moving ahead to, if you're doing the family planning and childbirth, how does that kind of change for a woman? Because, I've heard you on many different podcasts and talks, and I feel like this is a real reckoning, but in the best kind of way. So yeah, if you can talk about that, everything that happens.
I think that we don't tell women the entire truth of it because I think we've been afraid to scare them, but I also think we don't tell the truth in a positive way. We're neither telling them the truth in a positive way, and we're also kind of not telling them the truth in a negative way.
Exactly.
Meaning, anything you do that is worth doing is going to be hard. And I think that it comes with challenge and discomfort. If you're going to say, I'm going to climb a mountain, right? If you go climb that mountain with a pair of canvas kid sneakers and a light summer jacket, and but you're climbing, in the Himalayas, you're going to fail and you're going to feel miserable and it's going to feel awful and you're going to wish you hadn't done it.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
But if you have to wear hiking boots and have the proper equipment and bring food and, it could be one of the most joyful experiences.
Yes.
And so having children is like, I guess I'm using this analogy because my husband was a serious rock and mountain climber when he was young. And so before we had children and even after, he drags me all over the world and I love it. Right?
Yeah.
So we're actually going to India we go to India every year for his organization, Vision Spring. But we're going to do a trek through the Himalayas in northern India to bring eye care, because he's an eye doctor, so he brings glasses and eye care to the poorest people who've never ever had eye care up in the mountains. Anyway,
oh my gosh,
so
amazing.
I'm using the climbing analogy.
Yes, I love it.
Having a baby is climbing a mountain.
Yes,
and so if you're prepared, because people have been honest with you that it's wonderful, it's the best thing, and the love is you light up like Christmas in terms of the love, but there's a lot of sleeplessness.
Exactly.
There's a lot of frustration. There's a lot of
hormones.
There's
changing.
You go up and down. Sometimes you're going to feel bored. Sometimes you're going to feel lonely. But overall, the feeling is that you love this little person more than life itself, and you do anything for them, and you don't want to be separated from them.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, I completely agree.
But you have to tell women the truth. And I think when I hear parents come to me and say, we're going to sleep train our baby, which is the worst thing you can do to a baby's brain.
Yes.
We're going to do that because everybody else's baby is sleeping through the night when they sleep train them at 6 months, and we're exhausted. And I say to them, didn't anybody tell you that you don't sleep for the first 5 years when you have a baby?
Oh,
Again, wearing Keds.
Yes.
Walking
Say
up
it
a
louder
mountain.
for the people in the back. Yeah.
So you can't wear Keds to walk up a mountain, and you have to know that for the first 5 years you're not going to sleep.
Right.
But your hormones are built. You're built as a woman to be able to withstand the lack of sleep. And it's frustrating. It's tiring. Like climbing a mountain, there are going to be moments you're not happy, but your body is made for this. You have internal resources as a woman physiologically that help you, stamina that helps you to withstand the lack of sleep. If not, you would be sick the entire time. And mothers' immune systems actually rise to the occasion. If you didn't sleep the way that you don't sleep when you have a baby, if you didn't sleep without a baby, like at my age, that, you'd be sick all the time.
Right.
But because women are built like Mack trucks for this. So I think we need to be honest about it and say it can be uncomfortable. It can be frustrating. It's really tiring, but it's also probably the best thing you'll ever do in your life.
Yes,
right?
yes. Oh my
I
gosh.
think women would be more successful.
I completely agree. And I think that, I second guessed my maternal instinct so much. The show is called That Total Mom Sense. And I know being there, you were almost going to call it the lost instinct.
Yeah.
That's what I feel our mom sense is. And my mom sense was telling me, do not buy into this propaganda. Where it was, yes, everybody was talking about sleep training, and I actually co-slept with my third. I had twins, and then my third in 18 months. So Irish triplets, which is not ideal, but we wanted a big family and we got one, and it's great. God is great. So the twins, much to the behest of my pediatrician, who said separate them, SIDS, this, that, and the other, I kept them together. I swaddled them together, and just like they were in the womb, head to head, they would touch, and it was amazing, even just to be on the safe side in their pack and play, where we had the pack and play downstairs and the cribs upstairs, and we just needed one until they were too big. We would put them on opposite ends, and somehow magically they'd be in the middle. I don't know how they could do that. They were swaddled so tight, but they would find their way to each other and be together. And then, and I tandem breastfed them. Same thing. Had an amazing lactation consultant, Yosifa Lebeau, who helped me. And same thing. I mean, I just learned so much from her, and was going against the grain from those who are just like, I'm exclusively pumping, or I am only giving formula. And I felt like this is not what viscerally I am called to do.
Your instincts were speaking to you in a healthier way. They were telling you otherwise. Yeah.
Yes. And I did produce enough milk for both the twins. I supplemented with, a formula, hip formula that we got from Europe, but just to top them off. But I nursed them for a little under a year. I got pregnant with my third. That's when they started rebuffing me. And then my hormones were changing with this new baby in utero, and we co-slept with our third. So it was really, really hard. And I feel like, your book helped me feel so validated in my decisions. And even with the work, I have, immigrant parents, Indian immigrant parents, and I'm part of a broader Indian community where the expectation of excellence and academic accomplishments and, our jobs, doctor, lawyer, CEO, I felt like before I had the kids, again, I trusted this instinct. I was like, I am going to pivot and leave television proactively because I know they're mutually exclusive for me. I just was like, if I have to be at home with the kids and breastfeed, it's not conducive to breaking news. So I got to figure this out before we try. And it took 4 years, and I'm glad that I kind of laid the foundation beforehand. But believe me, I feel so insecure still because I don't have, those letters after my name or what have you, because I chose to make way for family. I don't know. So I hope that for those who are listening who have made those decisions, you're not alone, and Erica's book will make you feel so seen.
I sort of think about mothering today. I've often thought of this analogy like the Vietnam vets who came back from war.
Ooh.
That they were completely unappreciated and dismissed and not respected for what they had contributed.
Yeah.
And many, many, many of them got depressed. And there's a study out now that talks about that, maternal health is failing. Mothers are more depressed than ever. And the idea is that it's so hard what a mother does. It's such very hard work that you needed two really important things to ease the pain and make it less hard so you could enjoy the pleasure of it more. One is you needed a great support system and lots of extended family supporting you, but primarily your spouse supporting you and loving and admiring you. I always say 90% of love is admiration. Yes. Not fighting you, not saying you got to go back to work because you said you'd make money and we got to pay the mortgage and I married a professional woman. This is what's going on, right?
Yes.
Husbands are not loving and respecting and admiring their wives who are saying, I want to, which mystifies me because it's such a great, incredible sacrifice for women to put down their careers and say, I'm going to mother.
My baby. Yes.
And so you would think the husbands would go, yay!
Yes.
But they aren't.
Yeah.
So, and because we've influenced society in such a way that mothering has become, like those Vietnam vets, something that's dismissed and disregarded and disrespected.
Yes.
And so without that, without the extended family, without societal admiration for the role, because the elevated role of mothering, women collapse. They feel, they question themselves. Society makes them question their value, their spouses, and even their parents today. I mean, I've heard terrible stories of mothers who stayed at home saying to their daughters who got college degrees and graduate degrees, oh, you can't stay home. You're too well educated.
Right.
And it just kills me because what it does is it diminishes and demeans the role of mothering. So without the admiration of society, but more importantly, the admiration and love and support of your spouse and your extended family, it's too hard.
Yes.
I mean, there's a reason why young people aren't wanting children because it's not modeled for them, but it's also not seen as a respected, admired profession.
Exactly. And this brings me to just, alloparenting, which you touch on, and how we shouldn't be misled by what that is. Unfortunately, we don't have the village that, of yesteryear where we're part of small communities, and even women in the community could breastfeed your child if they were nursing. It was like that much togetherness. Yeah. We have come so far away, and it's all about the nuclear family, and the only help you get is often paid for. And it's like, it just should not be this way. How do we combat that in a society that's like this? We're so alone.
So what's interesting is that there was a reason for extended family and not just nuclear family. Because for many people, their nuclear family was abusive or had addictions or was severely mentally ill, or, you could have a father with alcoholism or a mother who was very depressed or a mother who was very narcissistic or, and so the idea of living around extended family when you're raising children is because if those children couldn't get from their parents what they needed, they always had grandmothers and aunts and right. So that was the point of living in extended family. And it's a problem today because if you live in isolation in a nuclear family in the suburbs, in isolation away from extended family, then first of all, that child doesn't have as many choices as they used to have, right? There's not a grandmother to choose from, because I often hear, we moved away from my parents because they're so crazy. My mother's so crazy. And I said, well, what about the rest of your family? What about your aunts and uncles? Oh, I love my aunt. I said, well, why not live near your aunt?
True.
So it doesn't have to be your mother. You can live near another extended family member, but your family is going to treat you differently. The expression blood is thicker than water, it gave you options to connect with a family member who is going to support you, right?
Yes.
But alloparenting is not generally considered in other parts of the world surrogates stepping in and taking the baby away and saying, I can soothe that baby as well as the mother. if the mother is healthy enough, then alloparenting means that the baby can have multiple attachment figures in their life when they're not in distress. People that they feel secure with, people they trust, people they can play with, people that make them happy to be with. But when they're in distress, they're going to go back to the center of their universe. The default is always to go back to the center of your security, which is your mother, if your mother's healthy enough. Now, if your mother's abusive or, maybe that baby forms other ties with the grandmother. But if the mother is healthy enough, and to be honest, I worked in foster care years ago. I worked in a clinic that worked with foster care. Children are so drawn back to the center of their universe as their mothers that even if their mothers were abusive and addictive and all these things, and they lived in a foster family with a lovely foster mother who was loving and generous and affectionate, they still wanted to go back to their mother.
For their actual biological mom. Yeah. Oh, that's
so that
heartbreaking.
says a lot about how important mothers are as the center of the baby's universe, at the center of their security.
Yes.
And so alloparenting actually means, not the way it's bastardized in the West, that when the baby is happy, the baby can go to other people in your life, a babysitter. So if you have a babysitter or a nanny, that's fine. Call it a mother's helper. She's supporting you.
Yes.
But when the baby cries and needs you, you need to be there.
Yes.
And so the baby in other parts of the world is easily handed back to the mother.
Yes.
Whereas in this country, you have competitive fathers, competitive grandparents, competitive nannies who say, no, we can handle it.
I can soothe the baby.
I can do it. What, you're insulting me. You mean that you think that No. It's not that at all.
Right.
It's that this is organically, biologically what a baby needs. They need to go back to the source. It's like going back to the mothership. Right?
Yes.
They call it a mothership for a reason. They don't call it a nanny ship. Right. They don't call it a grandmother ship. They don't call it a fathership. Right. They call it a mothership. And the reason is because the mother is the center of that baby's security.
Yes.
That's alloparenting. So what did we do? We bastardized it in this Western world, in the modern world, to say, you can leave a baby in daycare 8-10 hours a day. No problem. That's an alternative surrogate caregiver. No, it isn't. It is not. No. Once that mother is out of sight and sound and out of eyeshot and earshot of that very young baby, that baby goes into a crisis state. That baby goes into a stress state. Can that baby tolerate short periods of stress? We're designed, again, as human beings, as mammals. When we're under stress, we're designed to go into this stress mode, which is a negative feedback loop. What does it mean? Cortisol is turned on, the stress hormone, and then as soon as the crisis is over and the mom's back, short periods of time, it's meant to be acute, like running from a predator. Once the mom is back in the room or back from a doctor's appointment or whatever, the baby's been with the babysitter, then the baby, the hippocampus, another part of the limbic system, shuts off the cortisol, turns it off, like turning off the hot water.
Okay.
So stress is actually an adaptive survival function, but it's meant to be acute. What we're doing to babies is we're turning it on and leaving it on.
Yes.
And so then it becomes a system that can't be turned off.
Right.
So if you have a faucet in the country that once you turn it on, it gets stuck and it's impossible. Then one day I'm going to get the plumber to, it's like you have to get a hammer so you can't turn it off.
Come too far, yeah.
Right. So what's happening with children is that the stress system is turning on but can't be turned off. And that is what people think alloparenting is.
Yes.
That you're leaving babies with strangers for long periods of time. That's not alloparenting.
Yes. I feel like your works, your talks, your interviews are all so illuminating because of all the myth busting that you're doing. And these are polarizing topics, but I want to go there because we just need to. And I love that you can be this beacon for us. So one is on mothers and fathers and their roles and how they are biologically different, and our strengths and what we bring to a child's life is different for a reason. So can you tell us about that.
So I'm going to say mothers and fathers are equal in so many ways, but they're also different in many, many ways. And that's something we don't like to talk about.
Yeah.
Because somewhere along the way, I think it was feminism. That was really and one would say maybe more like second wave feminism, which really said men and women are just the same in every way. And in truth, our intelligence is the same. Our ambition may be the same. There's so many things that are the same. But we're different in terms of our biology and in terms of our nurturing hormones. Yeah. So women and men produce different levels of nurturing hormones that's correlated with nurturing behavior. So all mammals, we're just mammals. You know, we're not some higher level mammals, we're just mammals. And so what that means is that women produce a lot of oxytocin when they are pregnant, when they give birth, when they breastfeed, when they nurture their young. They produce lots of oxytocin. Now, oxytocin is interesting. It's a love hormone. Yes. Euphemistically, we call it the love hormone. It's protective against stress, but it also produces well-being and health and emotional health and love in the baby. Right. So the more you produce, the more you share with your baby, that baby's cup runneth over, and they then are able to share it with you. So there's a kind of reciprocal catch and release, a reciprocal relationship with oxytocin. But what oxytocin does is it correlates with mother's behavior towards babies being what we call sensitive, empathic, and nurturing. So lots of skin-to-skin contact, lots of soothing tone of voice, eye contact, basically the real emotional reflection and the real emotional attunement that comes with that oxytocin. It's actually a biological correlate in terms of behavior. So when fathers produce oxytocin, it comes from a different part of the brain, and it makes them more playful tactile stimulators. And there's a purpose to that, because fathers in nature as mammals were meant to encourage physical and emotional resilience. Yes. They were meant to get babies ready for the real world of being chased by predators.
Right, like when the teenage lion has to leave the pride. Yes,
that's right. That's
the father's preparing them for that.
Preparing them. But without the mother being fully present for that sensitive, empathic nurturing. Right. For instance, if the father replaces the role of the mother, then the baby is missing the most important ingredient for that resilience, which is emotional security, which gives them the ability then to do what the father is expecting of them, meaning explore, take risks, be physically risk-taking. So the nurturing of the mother is like putting an IKEA table together, is the first step in putting the table together. You have to do A before you do B in this step. So if you throw a father in there as the primary attachment figure, you could teach a father to be a sensitive, empathic nurturer, but in an evolutionary way, he's probably going to always go back to his default of being more playful, more distracting, less sensitive and empathic. Okay. Right. Fathers produce more of a hormone called vasopressin. It's called the protective aggressive hormone, and it's just as it sounds, right? So if you're being chased by another male lion that would eat your cubs, you are going to stand your ground and fight that, so that protective aggressive hormone is very strong in men, and it exists in mother lions too. It exists in mother human beings. We produce vasopressin to a lesser degree. If there's no father around, what will get stimulated is that protective aggressive if there's no one to protect us, which also brings up the point of marriages in the past have been like team building exercises where fathers protected mothers financially. They also protected them from, you'd say, the stress of the outside world so they could focus on the internal world. And so that was how vasopressin got kind of enacted in human beings, is that the father lion was protecting his pride. And I think with everything being uprooted in terms of women now saying, well, I want to be out in the world and I want to be home, they're voluntarily exposing themselves to the outside world stresses, which are very real: financial stress, stress at the workplace, interpersonal stress in the workplace. They're exposing themselves to that kind of stress, which previously they were protected from, right? So the fathers would say, I'm your raincoat, right? And I'll protect you from that. And mothers protected fathers from the internal frustration and stress of raising children. So it was a team building exercise.
Yes. Oh, I love that.
And so what's happened today is that mothers are still primarily the internal protector. They still deal with the internal frustration more than anyone. But now they also have elected to deal with the outside frustration.
Yes,
and then we wonder why their
out.
Mental health is, burning out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. No, it's so true. I want to get through a few more of these myth busting, like even just segments in your chapters here. One's on breastfeeding. I would always just feel like these pangs whenever I saw fed is best because I personally feel that scientifically, if you can and, have the ability to, breastfed and breast milk is, the best thing you can provide for a baby.
Yeah, of course.
Why can't we say that?
Yeah.
So breastfeeding and the skin to skin, how important is that? So
we are, again, designed perfectly to nurture. We breastfeed not only to feed our child the food that we feed them, which is full of immunological properties that no formula can ever provide.
Right.
From the colostrum to the breast milk itself.
Yeah, a powder and water can't recreate.
There isn't any way they're going to be able to. I mean, there's certain things that AI will never do. It'll never replace my role as a therapist.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, exactly.
I'm going to say formula can never replace breast milk. Okay. Yes. In terms of, they may try, but they're never going to get that going.
Yeah.
That's just the organic nature of breast milk. Okay. But the breastfeeding itself, from my perspective, is the critical part.
Right.
So breastfeeding forces you to be physically proximate to your baby in such a way that it stimulates right brain to right brain stimulation. So I've seen many mothers who bottle feed their babies like this, or like this, or
facing
like
out.
this.
Yeah.
Instead of skin-to-skin contact, which is what we know is that if you hand a healthy mother a baby, they're most likely going to cradle on the left side. And what that means is that from the left side perspective, you have more right brain to right brain connection. One of the ways that we diagnose postpartum depression is if a mother pervasively breastfeeds on the right side. Or holds the baby on the right side. So we know that the skin-to-skin contact, the proximity of skin-to-skin contact, mothers are forced to look at their babies when they breastfeed. It's an intimacy that you don't generally have with bottle feeding. Now, if you really can't breastfeed, you can imitate that intimacy by taking off your shirt. I mean, there are really mothers who haven't been able to breastfeed, or they adopt babies, or, So then I say, imitate as much as possible breastfeeding, which is take off your shirt, make it skin to skin, cradle on the left side, look at the baby when you're feeding the baby, let the baby fondle your breasts. Your breasts may not be useful as milk making machines, but they can be useful as intimacy,
and connection,
creators and connectors, right?
Yes.
So, breast is best, and I don't know why we can't say that. I think it's because there are so many people that are not having babies naturally,
right?
And they're having them through
appeased.
Surrogates, or they're having their two men or two women who are preoccupied with careers who don't, or maybe women are going back to work sooner, So I think it's, but to be clear, pumping while you're at work and sending the milk home is not what I mean by breast is best.
Yeah.
It's the actual intimacy that you get from breastfeeding that you don't get from bottle feeding, that starts to develop the right or social emotional brain of that baby.
Yes. And let's talk more is more, where, we have so many family dynamics where it's two income households and, everyone's kind of out of the house. And I feel like, many will rationalize that quality over quantity is just fine for our kids. And something that my husband and I talk about, because we've really chosen to make these sacrifices in our home and be there for our kids, is we don't want to be just fine. We want thriving, happy, just extraordinary human beings. And I feel like why do we have to settle for a mediocrity of quality is, 15 minutes a day with my kids, just fine. No. And I think it takes a shift in mindset about giving, about the sacrifice to prioritize our kids. So, if you can share why more is so critical. So,
Lord of the Flies and Peter Pan are two examples of, those are old books, right? They're old stories that already understood that when parents aren't present, bad stuff happens, right?
Yep.
The Lost Boys were troubled boys whose parents were not there, and they all had behavioral issues and were aggressive, and Lord of the Flies, when there were no adults to supervise and love and provide them with emotional regulation, you ended up with boys doing terrible things to one another, right? So I think there's a wisdom to the fact that as parents, particularly as a primary attachment figure, but both parents their presence is necessary, not just in a quality way,
right?
Because I guess the idea is quality should be assumed.
Yes, quality and quantity.
Quality should be assumed, right? Quantity is absolutely necessary, as well as quality. So, in other words, quality for me is such an assumption. Quantity should also be an assumption.
Yeah.
That you cannot raise healthy children without a quantity of time and a quality of time.
Yes.
They're
yes,
not
I love that.
They're not in any way mutually exclusive of one another. They have to be thought of as one, not two separate issues.
Yes.
You cannot raise healthy children without being there physically. I suppose you could say you could be there physically and be emotionally checked out. And I say that mothers can be there physically and be depressed or distracted or resentful, but you cannot be there emotionally without being there physically. It's impossible.
It's true. And for the families that say we need the double income,
need is a funny word, isn't
yeah.
it? So I want to address really, really poor families.
Right.
This study that I mentioned with mothers' mental health, a lot of those mothers were very, very poor or single mothers. I always question the single mothers by choice. If you have lots of resources and lots of extended family and you live with your mother or you live with a babysitter and you have the resources to be there, but if you're bringing a child into this world so you then have to be the only provider, then you're destining that life, you're fating that child to be in a circumstance where they're going to be without you much of the time. So I encourage people to think about the children as opposed to their own needs.
Yes, their narcissistic needs. Yes.
But there is no such thing as quality time alone. It is a myth. If you want to raise healthy children, you have to be there as much as possible. More is more. The more physically and emotionally present you are, I'm going to say throughout childhood, because usually I say in the first 3 years, but the truth is that it is throughout childhood.
Yes.
The more present you are, the greater the chance your child will be mentally healthy.
Yes.
And that's a sacrifice that, if you want to have healthy children, you have to be willing to make.
Right.
And so when we say we need two incomes, are we talking about couples who want a bigger house? I spoke to the head of one of the big think tanks. I was at a conference with him and we spoke, and he said, you know what the problem is, Erica? He said, the problem is that couples used to be happy living in a 1,500 square foot house with one car and vacations at the Jersey Shore. And suddenly the world became a place of materialism.
Yes.
Couples wanted 4,000 square foot houses, 3,000 square foot, 5,000 square foot houses, 2 cars, vacations where they flew away and did exotic things. And they wanted new sneakers every season. They wanted new clothes every year. He said the world has changed to become a more material place, which has increased people's needs. I mean, isn't that what marketing is about?
Yes.
Marketing is about making people buy things that they don't necessarily need, and as much of it as they can, right?
Right.
And so we have to be careful when we use that word need. Use it if you really mean it, but don't use it, don't pervert that word.
Right. I'm so with you.
Are you talking about you can't feed your children, or you can't pay for your rent every month? Or are you talking about I can't have a lifestyle where I can have more and more and more?
Exactly. We are in the times of surplus. And I'm thinking to, this ancient literature, Bhagavad Gita, that shares about this, that in this time, it's called the Dark Ages, Kali Yuga, we are so enamored by the shiny objects and the more. And it's important for us to actually put stock in what actually matters, which is the people and the relationships, not the stuff. None of that comes with you. And so I think we need to, reprioritize that. That's definitely not happening.
I have couples who come to me and say, we both have to work because we're saving for a house, and I say, can it wait? Can't it wait? And, babies don't need another room. So I'm like, what kind of house? They're like, a 3-bedroom house because we want to have a big family. I'm like, your baby needs you now.
Right.
They're going to need you then too, but they need you the most now. And babies don't need their own room. They actually need to be in your bed. And
yes.
They need to be in your room
around
for the first year or two. They need to be in your room.
Yeah.
So why do you need all those extra bedrooms now?
I love that you're giving us the tough pill to swallow. It's great. I know you mentioned this in another podcast, but like if you were in a crisis situation with a job loss or, a death in the family or something like that, you would just rise to the occasion and do what you needed to do to cut things back. So, yeah. And then the last myth buster is there's a few different points in here, but it's how we are adultifying our babies and infantilizing our adult children. That like philosophy and that, kind of phenomenon that's happening now is just so palpable to me. So yeah, can you speak to how babies are actually so neurologically and emotionally fragile, and why when we think they can self-soothe through crying it out, Ferber's method, or, they're ready for daycare and for socialization, these are actually big time misnomers that we shouldn't feed into.
Yeah, I mean, you just said it, so I don't know if I can say it better, but that infants are incredibly neurologically, physically, and emotionally fragile. And all you need to do is really look at them and see them. Not just look at them, but see them, that you'll see how fragile they are.
Yeah.
And are not meant to be born probably for a full 9 months, that they're born a full 9 months too early because just evolutionarily they couldn't fit through the birth canal. Our brains got big. There's lots of theories about it. But the point is that they're, when they're born like marsupials, meant to be carried on our bodies, skin to skin, to regulate not only the physical nature of them. So the heartbeat of the mother, the breathing of the mother helps to regulate their biology, but it also regulates their emotions, right? So babies who are born on their mother's bodies don't cry much because the stress system of the brain doesn't get turned on because they're so comforted, they're so close, they're so intimate, they feel safe and secure.
Yeah.
You could say that all of this stuff that babies have to be swaddled, that wasn't even necessary in the first year because the swaddling was the mother was swaddled with the baby,
yes.
So what you said about, twins being swaddled together, I mean, they were swaddled together with the mother. The mother would wrap something around both of them. So, and swaddling them is just another way to make them feel that the mother is next to them.
Yes, it's like you're in the womb again.
Right,
it's simulating the womb again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I think that there's, I think projecting onto very young babies that they're more self-sufficient and independent and resilient and capable of just handing to someone else and leaving for 8 hours, it serves the mother and father's defenses because they want to feel that they can just disappear and the baby will be fine.
Right. Even though there's like wailing. I can't tell you when my kids were young and I'd drop them off and I would go into the younger classrooms and try to help the teachers. Can I help this child who's inconsolably crying? And then the daycare, even though it's like, a lot of this was an amazing nursery school. They could not hug and soothe the child. A lot of times they didn't want to have the physical closeness. So the kid's just wandering around bawling.
So if you could see their little brains and how the stress system of that brain was lit up.
Yeah. Fired, yes. Fired.
And you would understand the damage that does to that child's brain.
Yeah.
Because children so young are meant not to cry like that. The crying is meant to be something that is an alert, like pain is an alert. The crying is meant to be an alert to the mother that they're in discomfort or in distress. And the mother is then supposed to come to the baby and soothe them and make them feel secure again. And so what's happening is the babies are crying and crying with no one coming in daycare, in nursery school, which isn't school too early.
It's not,
which is daycare.
yeah, it's too early.
And those children are, again, there's such consequences, such negative consequences to turning on that stress regulating system too early.
Yeah.
And none of them are good.
Yes, and same with the cried out method.
Yeah. You create learned helplessness. You actually create pathological defenses in that baby.
Yes.
Which, and the reason that I see this phenomenon of sort of projecting onto very young children that they're older is because it suits parents and their own narcissism and doesn't have to make them actually see their baby's fragility. But when they get older, what's happening is the children are not, if you don't give them that emotional security of your presence in the early days, then they cannot tolerate. So Jonathan Haidt and I disagreed about this because when he wrote his book about how we're coddling adolescents and young adults, I said, well, you can't, the problem is that you can only expect that much of an older child if you've given them enough in the beginning.
Yeah.
If they have a foundation of security, then you can start to increase your expectations of them. But you can't expect that much of a child who's older if they are fragile from the get-go.
Deficient, yeah.
Right. And so that's what's happening. So what's happening is these kids are more fragile in adolescence. Parents see that. They often feel guilty about not giving to them in the beginning or being emotionally checked out. And so then they baby them. And I think, in truth, I wrote a book about how if you didn't get to the first period of development, you do need to baby your children.
Right.
You do need to give to them.
Make up for,
But that's repairing something that happened earlier. So we have to say it for what it is.
Yes.
The fact that parents are babying their older children is because there was something deficient in the beginning that they didn't realize they were doing to their child.
Right.
And now their child can't withstand the adversities of life.
Exactly. And that's why they don't want to have kids now.
Right.
Because they're too emotionally fragile to sign up for that.
That's right.
Just really quick about the cry it out. I just wanted to share an anecdote with you and then we can move on. But my husband and I were convinced by someone to try it. There's an app that this is how many times you can go into the room and say, you're okay. And it goes from tapping to being farther away. And we did that with our twins and both looked at each other like, this is bonkers. We're not doing this. And I came across this blog where a nurse had gone to an orphanage in Africa. And I'm not sure which country in Africa, but she said that it was pin drop silence, and in the nursery, not a sound was coming from these infants. And she was like, why aren't they crying for anybody? And, the main caretaker there said, oh, they know no one's coming.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's
Which
exactly. They basically go into a traumatized state of dissociating from their pain.
Right.
And it's called learned helplessness.
Yes.
And there are very serious correlations to mental illness later on. So it's crazy because it's like torturing your child, going against your instincts to torture your child.
Right.
And then kind of develop these pathological defenses in them.
Yep.
And again, I think Ferber really is someone who I wish never had existed.
I know.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And his books should be burned. I don't like burning books, but I'm going to say if I was going to burn a book, that would be the book I would burn.
I'm with you. I would,
books, but that one we can burn.
Yes, I would join you. Oh my goodness.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so let's hear, what was your mom sense moment? You have 3 lovely children. Was there a moment that you felt like, I'm so glad I trusted my inner knowing on this one? I know there's many, 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 many scenarios, but if one just comes to mind right now.
Well, I don't want to give away too much that's confidential for my children. I'm always careful about that. But I will say that, so our middle son was the most sensitive. And he, in so many ways, he was the most sensitive. And he couldn't handle as much of the structure and the discipline. So we had to finagle how much structure he had in his life and balance it with lots of love and physical affection and emotional understanding. And he was definitely the most challenging in many ways. But that all paid off. So whereas other parents who might have had a son or a daughter like ours might have come down very hard on that child, might have come down with the iron fist, that would have quashed our son's spirit. It would have destroyed his character. It would have not worked. And so you have to know who your children are as individuals and know what they need as individuals. And mom's sense is an intuition. It's really intuition.
Yes. Oh, I love that. I love that. And they're not going to be exactly like you. They're not an extension.
No, you have to love them for who they. You have to love them for who they are as individuals.
Yes, yes. And what is lighting you up now? You have an upcoming book, attachment circles. There's so much you're working on. Your talks.
So you're correct. I have a book coming up about divorce, but really more about how to raise healthy children through a divorce, and that's coming out next spring. I started a nonprofit called attachmentcircles.org. Please check it out and join because it's a membership, and give money if you can because we need the resources to really get it going. But it's basically because I was seeing in society 2 things. One, that people were hungry for information about healthy parenting. So it's a platform that is healthy parenting of a certain orientation. Right. So it's based on attachment security. So it's the orientation of parents who are really sensitive, empathic nurturers, and how to raise healthy children. So lots of videos from professionals, me too, and then there's live events, 30 minutes a month. I'm actually going to be online so people can ask questions and I can answer them directly. But it's a lot of other professionals who will be online too. The other part of it, and I woke up one morning and I said, attachment circles, it's going to be a platform to bring communities together, because what I'm hearing over and over and over again is that the mothers I work with are feeling isolated and alone. They cannot find other mothers who are like-minded to share time with, to create an extended family support system, to create a community of like-minded women to support one another. So it's basically community building where they're play groups, which is what mothers used to do. They didn't put their babies in daycare. Right. They had play groups. They basically got together with other mothers who also had children, and the children ran around and played, but the mother was an earshot or eyeshot of the children. And the mothers now had other mothers to talk about, breastfeeding and pot roast and what kind of diapers to buy and all the things that, you don't know you'll be asking when you have a baby, about sleep and about, when does your child start walking and
all the milestones.
So all of the milestones and just to get support,
Right.
My child is starting to show signs of maybe having autism. Oh my gosh, me too. It's the support in a community that used to help mothers to feel not alone. And right now they're feeling so alone. So it will be real in-person communities of, and I'm looking for leaders. So if you want to be an attachment circle leader, go on the website and say, I want to be a leader. I want to be a grassroots community organizer where you actually form these play groups. And the play groups don't need to be in your home. You can alternate in because people say, oh, my apartment's so small. And I say, well, you can have a play group of 4 or 5 mothers with babies, and you can have one room for that.
Right.
And you can also alternate each other's homes, or you can do it when the weather's nice out in the park.
In the park, yes.
You can do it outside. You can do it in your backyard. So there's lots of options. You can do it in more public spaces that you organize together in church basements. Churches will often give their spaces. Churches and synagogues will give their spaces for free.
Right.
If you say I'm forming a mother's group and I want to get mothers and babies together, they'll offer their spaces for free. So there's lots of options there.
That's great. And I'm so happy to be an attachment circle leader. I'm excited to get my group together. Yeah. And I feel like it's my way of paying it forward, because as isolated as I felt, I would just find my few girlfriends to call on the phone to talk about this. I want to be able to foster an in-person community where these women feel seen and validated and supported. As you said, it's so integral to our growth.
I think you and I talked about doing an in-person event in New York. So for those of you who are listening who are in New York, stay tuned for our in-person event in New York.
Yes. I'm so excited. And then we are also going to be launching a series called Secure, where you'll hear more from Erica, and I'll field questions from all of you, serve as the intermediary to the expert, because I think this is something that we need consistently. And this capsule is something we can turn back to. And as we have friends who are in the family way, we can direct them to this resource. It's so invaluable. Anything else you'd like to share with our audience? Any last thoughts?
Just what I'll say is that more is more. The more you can be there physically and emotionally for your children in those first 3 years, but throughout their childhood, the greater the chance you'll be intimate with your children, the greater the chance you'll be close to them in the future, and also just that they'll be mentally healthy. Because in the end, if you are a parent, this old adage, which is you're only as happy as your least happy child. And so even though it may make you very happy to leave your child now when they're young, because you're dying to go back to work or dying to get back to some of your interests that you had before you had children, just remember that, if your child reacts to that absence, then your child will not be happy, and ultimately you will not be happy. So putting your time in the early days to love them and nurture them and be there for them creates a lifetime of joy and health and connection with your children.
Yes. And enjoy every season. I would say, oh my goodness.
It goes so fast.
It really, really does. I feel like,
a blink of an eye.
I know. Yep. We'll be empty nesting and giving them their wings before we know it. Yep. And I think it's so important to have a sounding board. And, I'm so glad to have you in my corner as we navigate this. If you feel supported, you're good. Thank you, Erica. This has been an honor. Thank you so much. Thanks for listening to this episode of That's Total Mom Sense. You can listen to the audio version wherever you get your podcasts. Just search for That's Total Mom Sense. You can learn more about my guests by logging on to www.thatstotalmomsense.com. Be sure to follow me on Instagram, where I'm most active on social media. My handle is at Kanika Chadda Gupta. And if you have ideas for show topics or guests you can't wait to have on the show, write to me at that'stotalmomsense@gmail.com. And lastly, please rate, review, and subscribe to That's Total Mom Sense if you haven't already. Thanks for being in my tribe.